All right. So it's 11 o'clock. So
Bruce,
this is the start.
is it 11 o'clock?
It is 11 o'clock. So I want to welcome everybody to our presentation, our webinar. My name is Bruce. I'm one of the staff scientists that works at Science North. I will be one of the co-presenters, and I'm joined by with Hugh, who is the chair of the local C.A.R.P chapter here in Sudbury. You will also see once in a while, I have two other colleagues. One is Katrina, the other one's Renata. They're kind of working in the background, making sure the tech is working really, really well. And they will also be helping us with some of these polls that we will be doing. All right. So this webinar is to really kind of help you identify what is misinformation, information that is incorrect out there, give you some tricks on giving you, the tools that kind of give you a toolkit in order to better prepare to realize, okay, this is real and this maybe not so real, right? So that, everybody has the best possible information, especially with this current pandemic. All right. Now, this session will be recorded. So it is being recorded right now. And once the session is completed, then we'll be putting this on Facebook and I believe YouTube so that anybody can watch it later on.
And anybody can share it too, Bruce.
Yeah. We definitely
feel like it. You can share it. You can comment on it. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And some of you are watching this through Zoom, and some of you, if you signed into your Facebook account, you're watching this through Facebook. So there's a few little differences. I just want to start with some housekeeping items so that everybody understands maybe some of these little differences that we have for one compared to the other. So if you are joining us on Zoom, you're going to see the icons at the bottom. So if you have any questions, you can add them right on the Zoom channel as such. And we're going to try as best as possible to answer some of your questions related to this webinar. Now, if you're on Zoom, what we're going to be also doing is you will be seeing this type of box that will appear once in a while. We're going to have that like series of questions, and it's a poll. If you want to join, you can kind of click on the poll. You're not obligated to join. And then we're going to see the results just to see, it's fun to see how you compare yourself to your peers and see, how informed you are about misinformation and so on and so forth. All right. Now, for people that are on Facebook, unfortunately, you won't be able to join in the poll like that. But I would encourage you to write your answers in a Q&A section, the little chat or comment below. And also, if you have questions, you can write them there also. So, Facebook users can do that. Now, one thing, if you're watching on Facebook, in order to be able to write your comments, you have to be logged into your own account. Okay. If you're not logged in an account, you won't be able to ask questions as such.
Carol LaRocque is already at it. She's sending us questions.
Oh, yeah. Lots of questions about the vaccine, about immunity and things like that. And I'll try to see if I have a bit of time at the end to answer some of those questions. We're going to go through the presentation. And as we go, we're going to try to answer some of these questions and stuff. So, you know what? Carol asked two questions about, I'll start off right away. I might as well, right? Might as well here. I'm just going to start off. What about how long does the vaccine last as in immunity? And the same question is kind of how will we need to require a booster shot every year? And those are very good questions. And the answer is this: we don't know. All right. The science is so new, we don't know. What they know from the vaccine and people that have been sick from COVID-19, and they look at the antibodies in their blood and so on and so forth, they seen with some people, the antibodies are still there after, 6 to 8 months so far, right? Because this is still a new, disease. So we're seeing an immunity up to that. Then to kind of answer the question of will we require, on an annual basis, another shot like the flu shot, right? We get one. We don't know yet. Maybe not. It all depends on, these new variants you're hearing. There'll be eventually a variant that, the current vaccines will not be quite effective against, and we might need to get another shot. But unlike the flu vaccine, just like flu virus, This coronavirus does change. You hear the term mutation, it just changes a bit, but not as fast as the flu virus. So we
Know
might
that,
not
Bruce.
need one every
There's
year.
there's a piece I didn't know already. I assumed
Yeah.
it was faster.
Yeah. So we might not need one every year. We might need one every 2 years, every 5 years. We just don't know. Right. So, Carol, unfortunately, I can't give you a definite answer because the science is so new. And you know what? Once the science comes out, we'll be sharing it with people so that people know what are the next steps for that. But for now, if you can, and you're that age group that can actually get the vaccine, please get it. All right, because it will protect you against the current virus and even the variants that people are hearing about right now.
And
Okay,
keep you out of the hospital too, Bruce.
Say that again.
Out of the hospital too.
What about the hospital? I didn't quite.
If you get a shot, it'll keep you out of the hospital.
Yes, yes, and that's one thing. You know, we're hearing about the efficiency rate of all these vaccines, and don't worry about those numbers. All the vaccines will keep you out of the hospital. Now, if you are unlucky and you get the coronavirus and you get sick, you will not get sick to the point that you need to go to the hospital. All right. So it really, really decreases the chances of people getting really sick from that virus. So you know what? They work. They work, whether it's a Pfizer vaccine, whether it's the AstraZeneca or the Moderna or the Johnson Johnson, and there's even one that hopefully we're going to get, the Novavax. Like, it's amazing. There's a whole bunch of the different ones that will eventually be coming out. All right, let's keep going. I want to talk about misinformation. All right. So this whole session is about misinformation. So the first question is, what is misinformation? So misinformation is information that that was accurate originally and was changed by accident. Somebody didn't quite understand it or misinterpreted it or didn't relay the message correctly. And keep in mind, there was no really bad intention behind it, and they sent that message to someone else. So I always think of misinformation, the telephone game, Hugh, right?
Right. You
start
whisper
with
in
one
somebody's
message,
ear.
and by the time it goes to the 10th person, you don't have the same message. So the message has changed through time. There was no bad intent. You're trying your best to listen to what the person's saying, and you're trying to relay that information, but somehow it changed. And now is not the correct information that we originally got. All right. And there's another term called disinformation. And disinformation is very different. Disinformation is information that people have put out that was intentionally wrong. Okay. So you hear something like people saying that the virus came from a lab in China. That is wrong. Somebody actually made up that information to share. There's some malintent towards it, and unfortunately it spreads around, and it can have some really negative effects, just like misinformation. All right, so you know what, there's the two types, but irrespective of whether it's one type or the other, we don't want to be spreading that, because we want truthful stuff to be out there, especially in a time of pandemic, and we don't want people to get the wrong information about the disease and also the vaccines, because wrong information can really have an impact on people's health.
Actually, isn't that what Science North is about in so many ways, is sharing good information?
Mm-hmm.
Enthusiasm about science and discovery and the whole questioning process to get good answers.
Yeah, to get good answers. And I think one of the reasons why we have so much misinformation that's happening, especially in this context with the pandemic, it's so new. We're learning so many new things, and we're trying to digest all this information. And a lot of people are hearing about terms they never heard before, like coronavirus, spike proteins, and this, and mRNA viruses, vaccines, and it's just coming in, right? It's just like, oh my goodness. And that's where the misinformation can really spread very quickly, when people don't understand the information, and unfortunately get spread unintentionally. All right. So first question. All right. So here's the first question for everybody. How much misinformation you think you come across, you consume, that you share, you read, you come across? So this will be our first polling question. All right. So, for those who actually have access to the Zoom poll, most information that you see right there, is it reliable? About 10 to 20%. Or if you go all the way down, most of it is actually misinformation. So what do you think it is? We'll give you about
I'm not
All
sure.
right. That's it. I'll give you another 10 seconds to kind of write what you think it is. And if you're on Facebook, you can write your answers and we'll take a quick look at them. All right. So Katrina, let me see what the answers are, the results with it. So most people think that the majority is good, which that's a good sign. Most people think it's actually good. There's no right answer here, all right? Because I will tell you right away, it depends which website you visit, depends what media format you decide to use. Some media formats are very reliable and others are like, you got to be very careful about that, all right? So just go and see. So most people think that the majority of the information that's actually out there is good. All right. So why is it so difficult to tell now what is correct information and misinformation? We talked about that, right, Hugh, for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's just that there's so much out there, right?
Oh, it's overwhelming, Bruce. It really is. And do you read the Globe and Mail? Is that more trustworthy than the Toronto Star? Do you read the Sudbury Star over online platforms? It's really difficult to know where to get good information. And
Yeah.
I think what most people would say is, I'm confused.
Yeah, you're confused. And keep in mind with these social media platforms, I'm not just talking information from reliable sources that you just mentioned, reliable newspapers or reliable websites where they do fact checking. You're getting information from your cousin, your uncle, your aunt, your sister, your friend, right? This is
And the
all
grocery
feeding
store,
into
Bruce.
you.
Bruce, don't neglect the grocery store. You're in line. There's National Enquirer.
That's right.
I'm sure it's an impact.
Yes, that is very accurate, National
I thought the
Enquirer.
coronavirus came from aliens myself after reading the National Enquirer cover.
It's like candy, but you got to not consume too much of it, right? So the thing is, especially in the context of the pandemic, there's so much information out there. You're getting it from so much source. It's jumbled. A lot of times what happens, especially when you go online, there's so much out there. You're not reading everything thoroughly. You're just looking things at a glance. And, you get these very sensationalistic titles and like, oh my God. And then you share that information thinking you're doing something good. And next thing you know, you read the articles like, oh no, my goodness, this is totally wrong. So you know what? It can happen to anybody. It happens to me. It happens to everybody that you think, what's there is actually something truthful and you share it by mistake and whoops, it does happen.
Oh, here's one. I had visitors who came to Sudbury, and as I'm driving down Paris Street, and there's Science North, they say, gosh, that looks like an alien spacecraft. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, but no.
So anyways, that's why we have so much misinformation on there, and it kind of seeps into also the truthful information. It sometimes gets integrated in there, and that's where things can spread the misinformation. So anyways, so let's look at this anyway. So first, another question, a poll question, is where do you get your information? So we'll do a quick poll. Is it on TV? Is it in your social media? Is it the newspaper? Combination of this? Are there other sources? So where are you consuming all this information?
How many of these can we click, Bruce?
I believe you can only click one. I know a lot of people are getting it from multiple sources, but where's the most you think you're getting? All right. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. We're just trying to get a sense of where people are getting most of the information. All right. All right, Katrina, let's take a look. So what do we have?
The big reveal.
Yeah, it's a combination. That's great. So we're not just looking at one type of media. We're looking at a whole bunch of different type of media. And you know what, which is good that, we're seeing this result, because what we're going to be talking about in this webinar is these different type of media and what you should be looking for to make sure that the information is actually truthful. All right. Okay. So let's look at an example of this. Okay. So let's take a quick example. So here's a Facebook post. It was actually in, I believe, November. Oh, there we go. In November. Yes. It was by CTV News. It was a post about a study and how mouthwash could kill COVID-19. All right. So we're going to talk about this post for a second here. I mean, it's from a good source, right? So if we look, right, it's a source, CTV News, so it's a good source, right? The article date, when you look at it, was only a week after the study came out, all right? Because sometimes some articles come out like years after a study and things have changed, right? But this one, the dates were pretty good, all right? You got the caption there to give you a bit more information, all right? You can tell that the author was CTV News, so they're the ones that actually wrote it. So you can tell that, you know, that's the person or the group that wrote it. And you got the headline. Now, unfortunately, with this post, the headline kind of gives you some misinterpretation of what this post will be. All right. So here's my next polling question. Okay. Based on what we just saw, how often do you actually read the article after seeing the headline? That's a good question, especially when we got so much on social media, so much that's on these platforms. How much of you are actually reading the whole article? That's important. That's a really important thing, because that's how misinformation can also spread, because people did not read the whole article, right? All right.
Only got so time, Bruce. So, you know, so you scan.
That's it. But that is one of the reasons why we have that issues with misinformation. So only sometimes, more often not. Pretty good, pretty good. But you know, the only sometimes can have an impact, because you might not have had the full story, and then you share it with individuals, family members, thinking it's that, and when in fact when you read the story, it's like, oh, it's something totally different. All right. So
well, even the picture, Bruce.
Look. Say that again.
Even that picture, Bruce. I mean, there was the blue mouthwash. That's, you know, what brand it is. But behind, there's a person smiling. Doesn't that encourage you to read it, to accept it as truth? I mean, if that person was frowning, I don't think it would have the same impact.
No, it wouldn't have the same impact. And then let's just remove the caption for a second. Oops, like that. And you're just left with the headline. And a lot of social media posts only give you that headline. And Hugh, you actually told me something a couple of weeks ago, because I mean, you write newspaper articles, you write articles that go on social media, and you told me, and I didn't realize this, that the person that writes the article is not necessarily the same person that puts the tagline, right?
That's right.
So it may be an editor.
It could be two or three people deep that before you get to actually read it, the original researcher, the person who writes it up, the editor or sub-editor, you know, maybe a section editor, if the paper is big enough, and then it gets filtered multiple other times. Other media could pick it up and just twist it their own little way. One word or one not or is or could, and the whole meaning changes.
The whole meaning changes. So you could just imagine it. You know, some people say, well, it's reporters' fault. They didn't do their job, but it's not their fault. They didn't put necessarily that tagline. And I understand why, you know, on social media and newspapers, they want to give you, you know, that tagline, because obviously they don't want to write a title that's 50 words long. They want to keep it short. And they want to grab your attention, right? It's attention grabbing. So, you know, mouthwash can kill COVID-19. And people are thinking, oh, wow, miracle cure. But when we actually look at the article a little bit more in detail, and there's a couple of things that come out, right? And we kind of underline a few things. So first of all, you know, the first sentence, you can see it's a lab setting. So they didn't put this, inject people with mouthwash or anything like that. People didn't inhale it. It's in a lab setting. Okay, that's one thing. One good thing about this article, they actually tell you who did the research. And if you click on it, it will bring you to the actual article of the research, the researcher's article and things like that, which is good, which is great, because you can refer back to the original source of the information. So if you see that, that's a good sign. All right. But again, when you look at a bit more of what's actually said, you see that the report was released on Friday, has not been peer reviewed. Peer reviewed means other scientists have really not had time to review it. It was so new, it came out, and they didn't have time to really review this study, although they say it kind of supports another study there. So there may be some truth behind it, but it hasn't been not saying okay, but other people haven't said, oh yeah, I agree with this. Other experts, I'll say other experts have not said that, okay? And then the last sentence, it actually says that there's a warning from experts. There still needs to be a lot of research because those claims, you know, you can't say it can alleviate, you know, COVID-19 100%. But the thing is, I mean, this is mouthwash, right? And frankly, if the virus is in your lungs, it's too late. The mouthwash isn't going to help you, right? So at some point, there's also some common sense that needs to kick in and say, now,
if it was only so simple, mouthwash would be everywhere. We'd be awash in mouthwash.
Now, if for some reason you are a professional kisser and maybe you don't want COVID-19 and you're looking at this article as a way of maybe not transmitting it to I don't know. I don't know how this article would really be useful for most people. So when you read the article, you're seeing that this was really a research project that they were looking at different chemicals to see how they were effective in destroying the virus. But in real life applications, you can't really use it, right? But if you don't read the article and you only look at the tagline, you might think it's a miracle cure. So this is just an example to show you that even with reliable sources, CTV News, they check their facts, they actually put the information, the actual study, so you can link to it and watch it. So it is, but if you only look at that tagline, it doesn't give you enough information so that you get the proper information. And then it's really easy. And you're on the phone, you see that, you share it with your friends, and then they all think, you know, lo and behold, and then the share, no, nobody can buy mouthwash in Sudbury because they're all depleted. The stock is, but you know what? It's happened not with mouthwash, but with other products out there in the world where misinformation or disinformation were said about certain products, and some of them were just, you know, certain types of drinks and things like that. And people just bought them like crazy because they thought
toilet paper.
Toilet paper is a little different, but yeah, people thought it's a little
it's the end of the world.
Yeah, it's a little different, that one. But yeah, but again, you know, that misinformation, disinformation can really give people a perspective where they might do something or change their habits, which unfortunately may not be helpful in protecting themselves against the virus. So anyways, so that's an example right there. Okay, so what sources of information do you trust the most? So let's look at this. This is part of our poll. So we're going to pull up the poll. So Katrina will do that. So is it health agencies, local news sources? Is it medical professionals, scientists and researchers, or none of the above? Who do you think? Who do you think is the most trustworthy, especially when we're talking about COVID-19, obviously, right? So we're getting a lot of sources of information out there. A lot of those sources are really, really good. But this is going to be interesting. I want to see what the results are from that. So Katrina, can we take a look at the results? Sorry, I keep looking this way because I have another screen and it allows me to look at the results. And health agencies, Health Unit, Health Canada, which is really good. And I'm seeing medical professionals and scientists. That is good. It's good to know that people are going to the experts. They're going to the experts, that they realize that these experts are the people that you can get the information out there. That being said, you know, you might have questions about the vaccine. Is it good for me? I might have an allergic reaction. I might have this. I'm at a certain age group. I might be slightly immunocompromised. I might be undergoing cancer therapy. There's many, many different circumstances. When you have those questions, especially questions that, you know, are very personal, you're not quite sure if it's going to be, the right choice for you. The thing is, talk to your healthcare professional. They know you best. They know your medical history, and they will be able to guide you best on what it is. Because as much as, you know, health agencies are really good at providing information, and even scientists like me are good at providing information, I don't know you. I don't know your medical history. I don't know, you know, your specific, you know, things that might affect the efficacy of the vaccine. So talk to your medical professional, your healthcare expert, because they are the best to give you that information for you. All right. But glad that a lot of people went with the experts as such. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about reliable sources of information. So I want to talk about an example here. Okay, this is a picture of Andrew Kaufman. Okay, he used to be called Dr. Andrew Kaufman. He's no longer a doctor. Okay, and because he's got that title, a lot of people see him as a trustworthy source of information. But when you start to do a very quick Google search, you just do a Google search and you start to see some red flags because he has certain background beliefs and denial of science that really contradict what the mainstream scientists and medical establishments say. So I'll talk about it. Just give me a couple of a second. We'll see the next slide. And unfortunately, he has spread a lot of misinformation and disinformation. So there was an article done by McGill, and they looked at this individual, and to really kind of nail down, what kind of individual he is and what's the messaging that he's giving. And he used to be a doctor, but he specialized in psychiatry. Nothing to do with the infectious diseases or respiratory illnesses. And he was commenting on medical things that are really beyond the scope of his field. And that's a red flag, and also contradict what experts in those fields were saying, right? So right there, like, what's going on, okay? He actually has become a very much prominent voice of COVID-19 deniers, anti-maskers, okay? And he used his title or expertise to spread misinformation and disinformation about the disease and how to protect oneself. And so when you look at his explanation, what he tends to do is you got this bridge of, ideas that he bridges, here's one idea to the other, and he builds this bridge to kind of give facts and credence to what he's trying to say. So he's using at times real facts that's actually out there to build his bridge. But after a while, he kind of runs out of real stuff to say and actual stuff to say. And he also kind of picks and chooses facts that kind of work with what he's trying to say. And at one point, he will then he won't even go from step A to Z. He will jump some steps. And it's almost like a leap of faith in order to get to his final point. The problem is, if you are not an expert in that field, you think everything's hunky-dory, all right? That everything should be good. There was another doctor I saw on the internet. I do not even want to mention his name, and he pretty much said, because the vaccines have this and this and this, which they do have this and this and this, his leap of faith jumped to say the vaccines are dangerous, but didn't give any evidence, any information where he did that jump of faith. And people that aren't experts might say, oh, okay, then he's saying something true. Me as a scientist, I'm looking at it and saying, whoa, you kind of jumped a whole bunch of different information that you should be sharing out there, and totally wrong. So Bruce, a lot of these so-called experts pick and choose what they want to share, and then they go to the final step, not really giving all the proper information.
Bruce, isn't it an interesting time that we live in, where people are given platforms to share, to air, to proselytize, to do all those things? I don't think we had quite that opportunity before, so it really is in our best interest to filter what we get. We listen to, what station we watch, what programs we listen to, or especially if we hear and look. I think TV radio has a huge impact, but TV, I mean, you're getting it through your eyes and your ear. I think we have to be really careful. And when I say TV, I could mean YouTube as well.
Yeah, YouTube and screening. And I want people to keep in mind that misinformation, disinformation is not something that's new, right? It's happened in the past, even before we had social media, even before we had newspapers, right? It was out there. It was out there, and it kept being spread. But I think with the technology that we have and the access that we have, it's really easy for it to just kind of spread like a virus, right? It just goes everywhere. That's what it is. That's why our program is called the virus of misinformation, because it just spreads. All right. So if we just go back to this individual here, so how do we know that the McGill article is truthful? Because when you go into it a little bit more, the author really went into great lengths to really examine this individual, watch the videos, and he denies the existence of a whole bunch of things that we know are medical facts, right? The chicken pox, for crying out loud. We've had chicken pox. It exists, and measles and things like that. So based on what we know of our medical history, when you have an individual that's denying these things, how can you trust anything else that he's actually saying? And this is stuff that you can get on the web. You can look and see and realize that, you know what, maybe this is not the most trusted news source. So my suggestion for a lot of people, especially when you have a doctor that is saying things that seems to be different than what other doctors are, is do a quick search on Google. Just look at what's out there. That being said, it's part of science, right? Part of science. We're always learning, we're always questioning, and it's okay for a doctor to question, what others may think about something. It's all right with that. But you need to do a study, you need to show results before you can actually say it's fact. And if you did your study and it's been replicated and others did the same study and the results are the same and it goes against what the others have said, well, that's what science is all about. But unfortunately, that's not what these experts are doing. They're just going from A to Z without actually doing the steps to prove what they're trying to say. All right, so something to keep in mind. All right, so can you spot misinformation? So here's our next poll question. So you think you can accurately spot this misinformation? Okay. Is it too hard to identify? Easy, with accuracy, very accurately? Can you spot this misinformation? And I'll tell you right away, even as a scientist, sometimes I come across something and I'm like, I get really excited. It's like, okay, that looks good. But I check. I do a couple checks and, just to make sure that it's okay. But it's so easy. It's so easy to get quote unquote suckered into thinking that, that information is actually true. Here's a good one, Hugh. We've heard this, it's actually misinformation, that there's different areas of your tongue that's more sensitive to certain tastes and things. That's actually misinformation. It's not true at all. And I thought that for years and years. Okay. It depends what it is. Very good. Very good. So it's good to know that media, other type of media, can really influence a person's perception of whether or not the information is truthful or whether or not it's mis or disinformation. You know what? It's not easy. It's not easy. And I'm going to show you an example of something that you might think is truthful, but is actually a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And some of you are probably coming across this. Let me just change it. Sorry, I'm going to change this. So some of you probably have come across this, and we're seeing it here in Sudbury. This newspaper is now being distributed in Sudbury. I even got it. All right. They distribute it for free, and then they entice you to get it. And this newspaper, as you can tell, has a very big slant against, a certain ethnic group, and especially a certain Asian government. All right. And really what this EPOC tax is all about is initially was a low budget newspaper that was given out kind of free in newspaper. And then with a certain individual in the United States got into power, he used that as a platform to kind of spread misinformation and disinformation about the disease, and unfortunately linking the disease with a certain group of individuals, which is horrible. It's terrible like that. Okay. So they are distributed in Canada, and I actually had a family member that received it, and he actually thought it was real. And I actually had to sit down with him and say, no, this is not good. This is fake. This is not real. And I actually had to sit down with him and show him other articles that kind of disproved what this newspaper is saying. So let's look at an article very quickly. Okay, I don't want to go through the whole article, but you have that big title. It's, if you're on social media, we call clickbait, right? You see that and you want to click on it to learn or to see. So they use these sensational titles. And we know, actually, the World Health Organization had sent a whole bunch of experts about 2 months ago to look at the origins of the virus. And they pretty much said, no, it didn't come from a lab. It's not China, that it's from the natural origin. They're still trying to figure out what it is, but it's not that. It's not that. So it's clickbait to get your attention, to grab your attention. And then you got this picture of people in, it looks like hazmat suits with a little caption that says, is this true? It's hard to tell, right? You got to take everything with just kind of a grain of salt and say, not sure what that is actually true. Okay. And when you read the article, and even with the clickbait, what they tend to do is they try to elicit a really strong emotional response. So if you end up reading an article and you have a very strong emotional response, just be careful before you share it. Think before you click, right? Just think about it, kind of analyze it before you share it, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get an emotional response so that you go, oh my God, this is terrible. I'll share it with all my friends. And next thing you know, you shared a whole bunch of misery. It's a trick of the trade. That's what they do. And then another thing they do to make it look real is that at the bottom, you can see they put a website. There's actually a toll-free number you can call. I guess it's to get the newspaper or more information. You can download the app. So these are all tricks that, this newspaper is using in order to entice you into thinking that the information from there is truthful. All right. And whether it's a newspaper or another social media post, they use the similar type of tricks, right, to look real as such. All right. So this is false. It's completely false. And if you ever get the newspaper, I didn't say I read all the articles, but I read some of the articles to see what it was. Very biased, very, very biased. It seems to hit the same message all over, very anti-government, Chinese, I will say, very anti-Chinese government, and blaming everything on, that ethnic group and that government, which is just not true. It's not true at all. All right. Okay. So what to do if you're unsure if a story is true or not? So let's say you come across that story in Epoch Times. What would you do? Right? Would you do more research? Ask someone you would trust, report it, or you're not quite sure what you would do when it came across it. I know personally with the Epoch Times, I kind of reported to, that family member and some friends and say, oh, look at that just showed up. Okay. Just so that people are aware of what's coming down the pipeline, right? So that that people kind of can keep an eye on it and be a little bit hesitant in accepting that information that's being given to them. All right, so let's look at the results of the poll. All right, Katrina. All right, that's great. Most people will do research. Most people will ask somebody they trust just to confirm this. And keep in mind, somebody they trust, and somebody they trust that has expertise in that, right? If you ask me about, airplane mechanics, I may not be the best person to ask about that. But if you have a question about COVID-19, yeah, sure, I can try to answer some of those questions. Some of you say report it, which is great. You now have the option, especially on Facebook, even Twitter, Google, you can report if something is misinformation or disinformation, which is great. And we need to do that so that those platforms can do what they need to do to try to highlight that this is not accurate information, because they are starting to highlight it more and more these days.
And there's a good thing to do as well. If your media platform that you're using has a mute button or a block button, you can use those to your benefit and condense the information that's thrown at you. If it's something you don't like, just find a way of not accepting it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point there. All right. So why is it so easy to share misinformation? I think we kind of mentioned that a little bit because there's so much of it out there, right? And so many different media platforms, and that misinformation gets lost in the mix. And I will say that, a lot of the misinformation that's being shared amongst individuals is that individuals find something that's very neat, a lot of neat information, and they want to share with the family and friends. They find it's something that maybe others will find useful. So there's no malintent. They're trying to do something good. Unfortunately, they're not sharing the right information. And when that's misinformation, is kind of seeping in between with truthful information, that's where it can spread very easily. So it gets lost in the mix. Whereas disinformation, somebody started it and they're sharing that with many people, and then those people will share this disinformation, thinking it's something that is truthful. So I find that that's more insidious because somebody intentionally tried to send information, and a lot of times this information is shared. So a good example is the epoch time. It's shared to discredit governments, scientists, the science, especially with COVID-19, and so on and so forth. So there's an intent to try to break down, what's truthful out there for whatever reason. And some people do it for monetary reasons. Some people do it because of their belief system. There's many, many different reasons why they would want to create false information, disinformation, and share it with others. All right. So good question. This one thing I had a question by a local newspaper asked me, why do people believe in this misinformation? Now, some of it's just because, okay, you just don't know, right? You're not the expert in the field. You're not as knowledgeable, so you'll believe it, right? It's just like, okay, so-and-so said it. It must be true, and so on and so forth. But there's a little bit more to it. And some of it has to do with biases. We all have biases, right? We tend to gravitate certain, ideologies or beliefs and things like that. And one type of bias is called confirmation bias. So if you have a bias for something and you come across information that kind of now adds to that bias, it kind of confirms that bias, then you're more apt to accept that information, even if it's incorrect. So if we go back to that newspaper, if you already have a slight bias against, that government, or unfortunately that, ethnic group, that newspaper just kind of reconfirms, that bias, and then you think all that information is accurate. So that's why you have to be a bit careful with your biases when, especially, you come across new information. How is your bias affecting whether or not you are accepting that new information or pushing it away? All right. So that's something to just keep in mind. All right. So let's look at some tools. All right. Tools to identify misinformation. All right. So we are going to inoculate you with information so that now when you view something, you will view something with this inoculant so that you can filter it a little bit better, and so that you are in a better position to really say whether or not it's false or whether it's true. Yeah, that's it. So first thing first, like the CTV article that we just had, please read further in the article. Just don't click and think it is true. The clickbaiting, the sensational title may not give you all the information. So it may be truthful, but you should read through it just to make sure, it's accurate, and, research it. Consider the source. Who's publishing it? Is it a reputable, media source? Is it CTV News? Is it CBC? Is it, somebody that it's an article where they have looked for the sources? Or is it an obscure website that you come across that you just don't know, right? So look at it. Who's publishing and things like that. Check the author. All right. Google search the author. If it's an actual reporter, reputable report, they will show up. You'll get information on it. If it's that doctor we just mentioned, or that individual that was a doctor just mentioned, you will see red flags appear. So it's really, really important. Check the date. And with this pandemic and this virus, things are changing all the time. So what was said at, at the beginning of last year may no longer be accurate now, because we're learning so much more about, the virus and things like that. So be careful, right? Be careful of the dates. So something that's closer to our date is probably a little bit more accurate than something that was 5 years ago. Not saying there's articles 5 years ago that aren't accurate. They're probably still accurate, but things do change, okay? Another thing is it a joke? Is it satire? Because sometimes there are websites out there, it's complete satire. It's not true. Or it's your friend that texts you, thinking it's a joke, and next thing you know, you think it's actually true. So, is this a joke? Is this true? Kind of question it a little bit. Find supporting sources, okay? So if CBC News says something about, news articles, look at other news sites, look at other media sites. They should be reporting. It shouldn't be just that one site, that one reputable site. So here's a good example. I was on Yahoo Sports and was reading my sports things. And then there was something that appeared, this is months ago, saying that Alex Trebek had passed away. Okay. Well, I did not take that as gospel truth, right? Because it's Yahoo Sports, like whatever. So what I did is I looked at other media sites that I find that are truthful. And then a couple minutes later, they start to announce that about his death. So that's how I fact checked that particular, news item. I checked it with others.
And yet at the same time, Bruce, last week when somebody said to me, Dr. Oz is going to be the game host on Jeopardy, I was like, you're pulling my leg, right?
Yeah.
And but he is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that has had a slight controversy where people have pretty much said on social media that, I'm not going to watch it when he's there, because unfortunately, Dr. Oz has really lost credibility. When he first started, he was pretty credible, but then he went beyond his expertise. And unfortunately, there's certain things that he's adopted that kind of go against conventional knowledge. So he's unfortunately become one of those red flags. So yeah, it tends to reduce credibility, but then when he goes on Jeopardy, it's just like, what's all about? Yeah, I agree. It's one of those. I'm not sure if Jeopardy did a good job in choosing that individual. And unfortunately, you kind of give a platform for that individual to kind of explain some of this information that unfortunately could be misinformation. You won't do it to Jeopardy, but you're still seeing that face, right? That's out there. So it's something to be very careful about. The other thing is check your biases, like I just mentioned. So if you have a bias going one way or the other, try to find a common ground in your mind to see whether or not the article is actually true. I kind of tell my 8-year-old daughter, when you come across a person you don't like, or something you don't like, I always say, try to find one good thing, just to kind of keep your bias in check, right? Try to find something that might be positive of that. And it's just to be able to have another pair of eyes when you look at something that may be new. And then look at the original source. Is it the original source of information? So that CTV article, if you click, you can actually come to that original source. You can read it. Unfortunately, a lot of these science articles are very, very technical, so it may be a little bit difficult, but they usually have an abstract or a summary at the beginning, so you can read that and get the gist of what that study was about. So that does help. And then the thing is, you should check. Is it true? Is it authentic? All right. You should be doing fact checking. So a Google search is a good one, but I'm going to show you a couple of websites that you can use to fact check. All right. These websites won't give you everything, but they're fact check websites. You can go on them. You can see whether facts are truthful or not truthful. It's not just on COVID-19, a whole bunch of them. You can go on Google, fact check COVID-19. There's a whole bunch of good ones out there. For the francophones, there's a CBC French has a group that is called, I forgot. Les Décrypteurs. Les Décrypteurs. It's with the SRC. And what they do is there's actually 2 reporters, and that's what they do. They debunk stuff. They look, they do fact checks. It's really, really good. It's not just on COVID-19 and things like that. And they give you tricks in order, and even French websites that you can use to fact check things. And then tineye.com is really neat, because if you come across a photo on the web, and there's even some now, I'm not sure if it's TinEye, but some apps you can use. You take that photo, the link to that photo, you use TinEye, and it will show you where that photo is also found in other websites. So therefore, you can see whether or not that photo is the original photo for the article, or it's been used elsewhere to describe something else. And if that's the case, then you know that photo isn't the right one for this article.
I've never used TinEye, Bruce. I'm going to have to.
Try it. It's interesting.
Everybody probably remembers that classic photo. It was the Golden Gate Bridge. There was and there was a great white shark emerging from the water, and it was that got, I don't know how many times that got reposted, but it was so completely false.
Yeah, completely false. I mean that, but you know what? Use that. Use those things. Be a little bit more critical, and especially if it's not being shared by other reputable news media, is it really useful? Okay, so talk about, inoculating your mind. You do your best. What happens if by mistake you shared something? And you know what? Anybody can happen. That can happen to anybody. If you were fooled, I was fooled. You shared something with family and friends. You're like, oh my goodness, this is wrong. It happens, right? We're all human. And the thing is, you might not have understood that information initially, but as time progressed, now you understand it and you realize that this information isn't correct. So what do? So the first thing you should correct it as soon as possible, okay? And it's really important that you delete that post. Delete it, because if you don't delete it, it could potentially keep being shared. So delete it from your social media feed, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. And then make a new post with the correct and reliable information. And if you fact checked it and you have that link that shows you, this is where I got the information, you can actually put it in there. So that's the best way that you can do. If you accidentally shared something, you can backtrack, make sure you delete it so it doesn't get spread anymore, and put the correct information that's actually out there. That's the most important part there. And maybe contact people that you might have sent and say, whoops, here's the correct information. It happens. It happens all the time. Okay, so how can you talk to family members, friends that share misinformation? This is a touchy subject.
Very touchy.
This is really touchy subject. And the thing is, there's a couple of things, but the thing is, keep in mind that individual, hopefully, isn't intentionally sharing that information, not sharing disinformation. They're sharing misinformation. They think that this is truthful. It's part of it could be part of who they are, right? And they're just sharing, thinking they're doing something really, really good. So the first thing you need to do is you talk to them directly. Okay, don't do it through a social media platform that everybody can see that discussion. You know what? It may be talking to them directly on the phone right now with COVID-19. Once COVID-19 is done, then maybe it's a face-to-face and have a coffee with them. Hear them out. Get their perspective. Where are they coming from? Why do they believe this information as being truthful? Okay, so listen to what they have to say about that. And you know what? Be very empathetic, okay? Anybody can get fooled by misinformation. Their intention isn't bad. And you know what? You can offer to do some fact checking together. Saying, you know what? I didn't hear this. I really didn't hear that, the sky is orange. I thought it was always blue. Let's take a look at this. Let's research it together. You can offer to kind of look at this information. You can share some of that information. But again, be very empathetic, be understanding. They're not generally people that are trying to harp their ideologies. Most people are just trying to share information. And at the end of the day, if they're saying, oh no, I'm okay with this information. Okay, it is what it is, but at least you approached it. Now, there are some individuals, family and friends, that may be very much stuck into a certain mindset, right? And I don't like using the word conspiracy
Oh,
theorists
you
and
use
things
that
like
word.
that.
I was going to use it.
Yeah, but there are some people that really think of a certain mindset and things like that. And even if you follow these steps and you try to share them information and offer to kind of go over this and things like that, they're not going to change your ideologies. It's very rare, right? It is what it is. So, it's very easy to say, well, I'm just going to block them, not see them and things like that. But that's actually the worst thing you can do, especially with a family member or friend, especially a friend that you've been close with or you're still close with. So the rule of thumb is don't talk to them or don't talk about that subject matter with them. All right. You're not going to see eye to eye. But, if you both like the Maple Leafs, there's nothing wrong about talking about the Maple Leafs and going to a game, right? So trying to find another common ground that you can still have that relationship with, because it's really important to continue that discussion, that connection with that individual. Because if you break that connection, you're kind of socially isolating that individual. And then the only social structure they have are individuals that believe what they believe right now.
And they
And
spiral.
it's like going down a rabbit hole, right? It just keeps going and going and going. Just continue having a conversation with them, continue having some type of interaction with them. It's important. And you hope with time, they might see, okay, well, he's living this life this way, he's seeing this way. Hopefully they might question some of their beliefs or things like that, but that's not your intent. You just don't want them to be completely socially isolated. You want them to still interact with individuals and at least still have a conversation with you, so that at least if they have questions about what they're believing, or they have questions about information that's coming in, at least you can have that discussion with them. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. All right. I know it can be very difficult with some people, but it's something to keep in mind.
Very difficult.
Yeah, it is very difficult. And especially, I find it's very difficult. I know I have a family member that's kind of like that. It's also very difficult when it's the only thing they talk about, right? It's hard. It's really hard when you're trying to say, okay, that's great. Okay, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about this. And a lot of times they're so much into that everything else has been excluded. So sometimes
it becomes a compulsive thing that you return to
some
every
individuals.
time. Yes.
Yeah, not all individuals. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but there's some individual maybe a little bit different. So try your best. Try your best to do that. And again, you know what? I don't want people to, spend all their time and energies, right? You got to be okay up here also, right? So there's some people, you're butting heads with, and if you find that you're just being emotionally and mentally drained to be with that person, I'm sorry, then you have to protect yourself also. So
You do.
there's a limit. There's a limit. Okay. So one last question. So after this presentation, do you think your confidence level in seeing this misinformation, disinformation has increased, especially on social media? We're trying to inoculate you. We're trying to give you the tricks in order to help you identify that. So I'm hoping that this presentation, this webinar, I'm hoping that's giving you some tricks and tips in order to be able to do that. All right, Katrina, let's take a look. There we go. Excellent. I was like, oh my goodness.
You get your paycheck, Bruce.
Yay, it actually worked. Okay. And again, these are just some of my tricks, some of the tricks that some experts, everybody has slight variations with that. And you know what? Think before you link. Think before you send something, because you want to really make sure that, especially when it gets you that emotional response where you're like, oh my goodness, or something like that. And you just want to share right off. You know what? 30 seconds, a minute, walk away. just let it.
Bruce, I have to identify something that you and I and many of the staff of Science North, and probably all of them during the course of their tenure at Science North, Nightlife on the Rocks. When we hold events like that, and we will again.
Yes.
actually forces you to have conversations with other people about topics that maybe is that grand topic of the evening,
Yeah.
but maybe it's something completely different, something maybe a piece of a presentation you saw, or maybe I'm thinking about all the different events that we had. Like one of them was about chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
One was about martinis or James Bond or secret.
Mm-hmm.
These events that are held here in Sudbury at Science North in the evening for adults is a wonderful platform, a wonderful opportunity. We create so many great opportunities for kids and for teens.
Yeah.
We do as good a job sometimes for adults, and I congratulate Science North for attempting to integrate adults, older adults, much older adults, into the discussion about this and so much more.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, we're all a community, and we want all members of our community to have, all the information, and especially with this pandemic and vaccines, so that they make an informed choice that they feel comfortable with. That's the biggest thing that we want, people to come out of this, right? That you didn't make your choice based on misinformation that's out there, but truthful information out there, and that you asked the proper questions to the proper people. That's the other thing that we need to remind people about that. So I just want to finish off with one last thing here. So some of the articles that we used to make this presentation, you could just do a Google search here. And if you want a list of all the different websites that we use that we're inoculating you with, when you are going to do the survey for this, because I believe you got a survey link for this, if you leave your email, we're going to send you the links to all these different websites that we use, so you can look them up at your own convenience. All right. So there's a lot of information out there to help you. Sometimes a little bit overwhelming. You don't have to look at everything, but there's a lot of information out there to help you spot what is misinformation. All right.
Bruce, you are preaching to the converted in some ways, the people who want to ask questions. In one of your slides, you said there are people who don't want to have, they just want to keep getting what they've been. It's that confirmation bias.
Yeah.
How do we reach those people, the thousands out there who are inadvertently really perpetuating some of this? It's that a tough job, isn't it?
It's a tough job. And also when you use social media, they have these algorithms that will give you sites or information that you liked. It's very rare that the algorithms give you something that's totally different, because they want you to continue consuming online. So it's really easy to get into those type of things that you just keep seeing certain things over and over again, because it's just, and then it's confirmation bias.
I ordered chocolate online, and now I get all these ads that are about chocolate.
That's it. And I had a meeting with some colleagues, and I showed the newspaper, the Epoch Times, kind of mentioned it about it. 2 days later, it was a Google ad about Epoch Times.
They're listening. There's a conspiracy theory. They're listening.
Yeah, and the thing is it's like, I wasn't positive about it, but they still sent an ad. So it was kind of really, really interesting about that.
So you're going to go through some of the questions, are you?
Yeah, I want to go through some of the questions. Some of these questions have to do with the vaccine. So I'll answer as many as I can. One question, Keith said, why do some people get serious side effects at the second dose? Okay, so keep in mind, when we use the term serious side effects, it means that you're not breathing. You're gone to the hospital, you could die. Okay, that's the term, a serious side effects. A headache, a slight fever, some general malaise is not really a serious side effect, especially if it only lasts like a day or two. Okay, so that, I'll tell you right away, if you get injected and you feel a fever and general malaise and a little pain and aches and pains and things like that, that's actually a good sign. It's actually showing you what's happening is the vaccine has stimulated your immune system to fight the virus, to get it ready for the virus. So all those symptoms you're feeling is actually a good sign, because it's actually saying the vaccine is actually stimulating the immune system. So your immune system is going to be ready to go if you get exposed to the virus. Now, some people say, why do we get some of these effects a bit stronger with the second dose? That's part of our immune system. So when you are exposed to something foreign the first time, your immune system will react, and they'll react to, oh my goodness, and things like that. We need to do what we need to do. But when it's exposed the second time, it will react even stronger, because they want to stop the disease-causing organism right in its tracks before it can get you sick. So you get a stronger response. And again, that is a good sign. It's a good sign that your body is ready to go and ready to fight the disease. Now, there are some people, they'll say that malaise and headache and the fever, there was actually a nurse, she described some of these malaises that she got after the vaccine. It's like, you know what? I stayed at home. I didn't go to work for a day and a half. And at the end of the day, I'm fine. And I know now that I am protected from the vaccine. So if some of you are a little bit hesitant because of what you could potentially feel, again, these type of reactions, not the serious ones, those type of reactions.
Maybe some of this, Bruce, has to do with the vocabulary and the adjectives and verbs we use.
Yeah.
Okay. What about mild side effects? So
that's it. And that's what it is.
I had to laugh. His other question here is, so I should not expect that $10 million return from the African bank or no. From the Nigerian princess. We know about these things, but the misinformation is so insidious that we sometimes really can't get it. What other questions are there out there?
I just want to finish with one thing about the side effects before we go. So there are people, I will not sugarcoat it. There are some people, and it's a small percentage. I mean, we've had millions of people vaccinated against COVID-19, and the number of people with serious side effects, like maybe on two hands, right? And that's why when you do get injected, they ask you to stay at a doctor's office or at the injection site for 15 to 30 minutes. Because if you are going to have serious side effects, it's going to happen there. And like I said, the most serious ones are anaphylactic shock, you can't breathe, or you start to have hives. And you know what? You're in the best possible location to get help, because you're surrounded by medical experts. They do have the equipment and the drugs to treat you right then and there, if a person were to have a serious side effect. But tell you the truth, with all the millions of doses that have actually been administered right now, nothing. In fact, the United States, right? The number of people that have died due to the vaccine, and they've looked at all the data and things, is zero. In the United States, the number of people that have died of coronavirus is over 520,000 individuals. The virus is a lot more dangerous.
And they've inoculated 100 million people already. It's really quite intriguing to see that. And I don't know anybody who's watching, because we mentioned CBC and CNN and the Globe and Mail. I tend to watch another organization called Sky News out of Britain. And they on their screen not only talk about how many people were inoculated or vaccinated, but they also have a scale that shows how many people received the second vaccine and second dose. I wish we had that scale and celebrated it more than we do. It just seems we're not quite.
We're not there yet.
We're not there.
We're not there yet. But you know what? This discussion might be very different in June.
Well, we'll do it again, right?
Well, I'm not sure if we're going to do it again, but it will be a different discussion in June.
What else have you got out there? There's a couple of other questions and some chat.
The AstraZeneca question?
Yes.
What is my opinion about AstraZeneca? Okay. So I don't know why AstraZeneca gets a bad rap compared to the other ones. It's just maybe the way the manufacturing process is, the way that the testing was initially done. Unfortunately, they went off with the rocky start and all that, and unfortunately, it kind of kept going a little bit. So my opinion with the AstraZeneca is that science has changed. So, initially the science was saying don't give it to people over the age of 65 because they did not have enough data to know whether or not that vaccine would be effective for people over the age of 65. We now have a lot more data. In fact, a lot of people in Britain have been vaccinated by this no, vaccine, and they're seeing real world, data showing that this vaccine is very effective against the coronavirus. All right. Now we heard about clots, right? Blood clots that
Yes.
that with this vaccine, and the experts have looked at the data, and frankly, the number of individuals that end up with blood clots from the vaccine is lower, if not equal, if not lower, than the number of individuals just naturally that would get blood clots without the vaccine. All right. So the thing is that scientists may have found, maybe a reason why blood clots could potentially happen with that. But no, don't worry about it. It is safe. Okay. Coronavirus can cause blood clots. People have died because of blood clots that the coronavirus has done at a much higher rate, right, than what this vaccine potentially could do. So,
Bruce, I have to ask the question then too, because I listened to a CBC program as I was driving one day.
yeah.
Maybe it was Monday or Tuesday, and it was on the Russian vaccine. I was
Mhm.
Sputnik 5, but
Yeah.
they called it Sputnik V, and I thought, well, I
No,
thought it was
it's
Sputnik 5, but
five.
what about the Russian vaccine? Will we? I mean, that's a whole topic that we probably we don't have the time to touch on.
No, I think the Russian vaccine, the reason why, I'll say Western societies have really not looked at it is two reasons. Is that they really rolled out that vaccine a little bit too quickly.
Fast like
They
that, yes.
hadn't done enough uh, uh, research on it. But now that there are more and more individuals that have taken the vaccine, we will be able to see, real data, right? Data of people that have actually have had it, and see whether or not it's effective. So as there's more countries that will allow that vaccine come in, and there's more data that will come in from that vaccine, I think this is where individuals, especially Western societies, might look at it a little bit more.
That's where
Closely.
we've got to watch the misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah, that one. Right now, I can't comment on it. From what I saw, very preliminary data, it seems to work. It seems to work well. But again, because they went from testing it on a couple hundred individuals, not even, and saying it was ready
It
to
was good.
go. When the normal vaccination process, you test it on animals, you test it on a couple of tens of people that are healthy, then you test it on a few, 100 people, and then you test it on 10,000 plus people, right? That's the normal. And they didn't do that. So that's why there was a lot of hesitancy about that. So,
Bruce, I have to tell you, somebody else has typed another one up that really, and we were so close. Here it is, the end of March. And what comes right after that is April Fools. Are you predicting that there's going to be a lot of disinformation and misinformation that comes from April Fools about this and, of course, other topics?
I don't know, and I'm hoping not, please. let's not do that. We want people to feel comfortable with the vaccines, and
But I
we
wonder how
want
many
us to
people
be vaccinated so that we can return to some type of normal life, right? So that
many of
we can
us watch many of us watch these April Fools things, and we ourselves are fooled until we go, yes. And maybe that's really part of this big conversation we're having today is, watch out for April Fools and watch out for every day that's like April.
That's satire, right? We got to be careful.
I don't know.
I'm going to stop. I'm going to finish with one last question. Well, there's one before. This is, when will Sudburyans have the opportunity to get the vaccine? Good question. You know what? The health unit will let us know. They will keep us posted when that's happening. So they will send that information when that will be coming. So I can't even answer that question. And right now, I don't think they have a definite answer, but it's coming. It's coming. And then
you can't neglect Elaine's little comment here about, and this has been in today's Globe and Mail, why are we delaying so much when the manufacturers say and researchers say it should be shorter? And
yeah, that's a really good question. So the researchers and manufacturers, when they did the research for this vaccine, they're trying to see whether it's effective, and they were trying to speed up the process, right? So that's why they did it. You get your second dose after about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, because it takes about 2 to 4 weeks from your first dose for your body to build up your immune system towards it. And the 3 to 4 weeks later, it's kind of like a booster shot to keep you going. Now, what they're noticing with real, data of people that have been vaccinated, they're noticing that, the antibodies, your immune system, even after the first shot, is quite high. All right. And they're saying, well, maybe we don't need to give that booster there. We want to give it when it's starting to go down and wane, and get it back up, right? So when you look at many other vaccines, like, vaccines that we get when we're like 2 years old, you don't get a second shot right away. You get one at 5 years old, at 10 years old, at 20 years old, right? You get the boosters spread out. So that's one of the reasons why they were looking at. The other primary reason is, if we can spread out when the first and second dose happen, we can inoculate more people with that first dose. That being said, there's somebody that was asking about delaying the second injection for seniors, if that was appropriate. There's some doctors that are wondering about that. And the reason for that is, with age, your immune system will not react as aggressively, as quickly. Okay. So after your first shot, your immune system may not be at the level as it should be compared to a young person that may be already ready to go, right? So that's where some doctors say maybe for certain age groups, what we should do is give that second dose a bit earlier, so to kind of give you that booster to get it up, so that you are better protected. But again, there's not too much data on that. They're just wondering if that should be the case for certain age group, whether delaying is a good thing or not delaying is a good thing. I think a lot of medical experts think, based on the data, let's get as many people immunized as possible, because if we can break the chain of transmission, that it goes from one person to the other, because we're all immunized, even if it's not 100% immunity or whatever, we're still going to break that chain of transmission. That will help decrease the spread of the disease throughout our population.
Bruce, you know what? There's some of the questions, and it's true. I mean, they circulate in our community, and I've had people say that, and maybe I've been guilty of it as well. We've turned to movies like Contagion.
Oh my God! No.
What was the other one? We've turned to movies like, I can't even remember the one that Dustin Hoffman was in. If that was Contagion.
It was called Outbreak, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. And we've watched, Walking Dead. I don't know. I mean, is that part of the disinformation as well? Do we want to believe that zombies are going to... I said the word zombie. We haven't said it yet.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just I think the thing is, there's so much information out there. It's easy for misinformation to creep in, and some of it looks real. People are just trying to help each other and sharing what they think is actually real. And really just kind of think before you link, do a bit of research. Hopefully the toolkit that we gave you has inoculated you so that you kind of question what's actually out there, and you search a little bit more before you actually share that information from to others. And at the end of the day, if you're not sure, especially when it comes to the vaccine, talk to your medical professional. They are the person to talk to when it comes to that.
What a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation around this. And, I do think I would encourage us to do this again sometime. Until now, we've been kind of a little stunned and a little overwhelmed by everything. But now, a year later, we're starting to have that. So what if? How come? What's next? Bruce, I'm waiting for the first book, expose book, and I'm not sure if there's one out yet that really recounts. I know TV Ontario did a 1-year retrospective of things.
Okay, yeah.
I'm waiting for the almost like the Watergate exposure of the whole thing. And from my part and the part of C.A.R.P here in Sudbury and C.A.R.P National, I think thank you again to Science North for
You're
doing
welcome.
this, and so much else that you do to help us live better quality life. better engaged life, being better citizens. That's huge.
It's huge. And you know what? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Please get vaccinated, because I want to be able to go outside and see some friends and family members and do what we need to do. And the more of us get vaccinated, the quicker this will end. So when it's your time, roll up your sleeve and get vaccinated.
I want to hear the sound of kids in the lobby at Science North again. I want people lining up for the IMAX. I want to see events like Nightlife on the Rocks come back to us once again. And from as chair of the local chapter of C.A.R.P, all ages, all people, all socioeconomic backgrounds, Science North engages with all of us, not just here in Sudbury, but across the North, and to guests who, again, we want to welcome back here into the Sudbury region.
Yeah, very good. All right. Thank you very much for joining us. And please fill out that survey so we can send you the links so that you can learn a little bit more about how to spot misinformation and disinformation. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.